I'd like to call this meeting, of the Board of Supervisors work session on February 10th, 2020 to order. Ms. Lawrence, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mostowski?
Here.
Mr. Hodges?
Here.
Mr. Garber?
Here.
Mr. Moran?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here. Next item on the agenda is review and adoption of our meeting agenda for this work session. Owen.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the amended agenda, please.
Sorry. And we do have an addition on 4A, we're changing it, not 4A, 4E, 4D, Natasha will be talking for the place of Ms. Tessaneri, and also for 4E, so I just wanted to clarify that just. And any other discussion on that? Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Mr. Mostowski?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. Next item we have on the agenda is 4A, work session matters, fiscal year 2021 budget request, Three Rivers Health District. Ms. Crystal Reagan, business manager, will be speaking, and we did get a packet in.
Good evening. Dr. Williams could not be here, so apologies for that. I will try to answer any questions that you do have. In the package, the first page is the budget proposal. We are requesting level funding again this year. I just wanted to break down some of the expenditures so you can see what the money is being spent on. So at the top is just a breakdown of the revenue, the county's commitment, the state share, and then the revenue that we receive from our services, environmental health, family planning, nursing, things of that nature that we get from the health department. Then we go down to the expenditures. I broke down the salaries of the individual positions that are within King Williams Health District. Some of the things I'd like to highlight is our nurse practitioner, Linda Mitchell, been with us for a year. Absolutely wonderful addition to our health department, so we're happy to have her. And then you'll have our support services along with Dr. Williams' salary, medical director. The other major costs are the rent. However, King William owns our building, so we actually pay that back to King William County. And the other large expenses are pharmaceutical drugs to give to our patients, along with information technology, so computers, printers, networks, telephones, etc. That's a large cost. And we have about roughly 8 employees in the office, so that does become expensive with that. But other than that, though, we try to keep our costs low with our other expenditures. And the way we do that is by our grants. We have over $1 million in grants. And we also utilize our Marine Corps, our MRC Medical Reserve Corps volunteer program to provide assistance, support. They go out to the community, they do community functions, events, and that way our staff can be in the office serving the public in a different capacity. So that actually helps keep our costs down as well. We also partner with Bay Aging. We have a gentleman in the district that wants to get back into the workforce. So we're hopefully providing him that service and also getting support for the district at no cost to the health department itself, but Bay Aging gets the service, and so do we. So that's different ways we are utilizing the cost of the grants, etc. We use cost to pay for some payroll expenditures plus equipment. We have a grant that we focus on opioid crisis. So that provides provides expenditures so we can purchase things to go out to the community to educate personnel and staff about. So you do try to utilize that as well. Are there any specific questions I can answer? So the annual report that you have really focuses more detail of what we provide regarding environmental health. It breaks down our rabies, our beach inspections, things of that nature. And then there's a little couple pages in the back about population health, what we do in the community. We are part of a lot of organizations throughout the health department, Three Rivers District, including whatever's in King William. And we like to be on those board of research councils. We like to be present in those types of meetings. So that's all listed in our population health section of that. Any questions? I'm not very good at this, so Dr. Williams does a much better job.
Great. Start this time.
Since I just got this, I haven't had a chance, but what's on the horizon? Anything new or?
Yes, we're
Major changes?
trying to look at our internship program with local high schools to get that community involvement, to see if there are kids that are interested in credit hours, maybe work stuff. I mean, we have environmental health, that's a great career path. Our epidemiologist is actually located in King William Health Department locally, so I think that would be a great internship program for anybody looking to go into a medical field or something of that nature. So we're looking at that. A couple of things just off my head just went out. And then also internships with colleges. We've gotten JMU, we've gotten Old Dominion internships in the community. So we really would like to get more of that extension into high schools, locals, and get those local kids into the group. And even if they're not looking for an internship, maybe volunteering for credit hours or support like that. So getting our youth program and the MRC program is something we're looking forward to as well. And then also to our nurse practitioner, Linda Mitchell, is trying to do night clinics. So we can stay open later for those individuals that work during the day. So we can provide that support and those services after hours. And then we're also trying to expand out to the community, the guest service, things like that in Gloucester. But we're trying to see where else we can go out in the community to provide those services so that people don't have to come to us, because transportation is kind of hard for the low-income individuals, but getting out there in the community. So those are a couple of the things that we're looking at in the future.
The funding by county, we are, I guess, towards the tail end of that, aren't we? Like King William?
Yes, but you receive a lot more grant funding because you do have your epidemiologist here, environmental health, and then Linda, our nurse practitioner, also receives some grant funding for her position as well. So you get a little bit more benefit in the district by having these people out. We don't have to pay for it, so that's fortunate for King William to be in that position.
Thank you.
People are positive.
No, I'd like to compliment the job that you guys are doing, the job that Dr. Williams has done since he's come on board. I know at the regional level, Lou is very happy, which makes all of us PDC commissioners very happy as well.
Well, great, thank you.
Bill? Thanks for the presentation that we discussed, take some reading, so.
Okay,
go over that.
great. If you have any questions, Dr. Williams' card is on top, so feel free to give him a call or email him anytime.
Maybe we should call him instead of you, or
I'm sorry?
call him instead of you.
Well, you can call.
Oh, you-
Either one,
All right.
it's just that his business card's on top,
Okay.
so, but yes, no, either
Thank you,
one of
sir.
us are available anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item I have on the agenda is fiscal year 2021 budget request by Bay Aging. Mr. Tinsley Go, Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening. Kathy Wesley, our President and CEO, sends her regards. Couldn't make it tonight. I'm also joined by Pat Sanders, who is the Bay Transit Operations Director. We also are joined by our appointed board member of King William County, Reverend Rhea Harris, who we are very happy to have on board. She's a very strong advocate for the aging and disability services in King William and in our service area more broadly. We are now in our 42nd year as the area agency on aging, serving the Middle Peninsula and Northern America, including King William County. And in that capacity, we administer funds, federal funds from the Older Americans Act, as well as the Department of Rail and Transportation for transit. We also leverage many other state and local and federal sources of grant money to serve the aging and disabled and those with other needs in King William County. You have a packet, or you have a page that highlights some of our accomplishments in King William in fiscal year 2019, including the Meals on Wheels program, in which we served 102 seniors with nearly 9,000 home-delivered meals. We had a partnership with Healthy Harvest that now enhances those delivered meals with over 6,700 pounds of fresh produce. And our Older Americans Act activities include health education. We do also administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program in King William that serves 44 people. And we also have our apartment complex at Winters Point that received 104 hours of support services from Bay Aging employees. On the see, so from a local perspective, it's all about the local match that leverages the state and federal dollars. And thus you get a return on investment of your local dollar to a great degree. We are asking for the aging program this year, we are asking for a 2%, which is a $156 increase over last year to help us offset rising costs. And we also note that 8 state aging employees live and work in King William, and that we had 9 volunteers and also provided 15 seniors with insurance counseling through Virginia Insurance Counseling Assistance Program. We are, in terms of the future, we are heavily involved in the Aging and Dementia-Friendly Communities Project. We have meetings recently in Urbana, and many local, both caregivers and administrators that are interested in our movements in that direction. And we're also increasing our presence in the home care business in this part of our service area, and we look forward to continuing that expansion in 2021. I'm also speaking with respect to Bay Transit. Ken Pollard, our director, could not be here tonight, but Bay Transit has been operating in King William for 18 years. Last year we provided 5,582 rides to King William County residents, which is a 19% increase over the previous year. Most of those rides were either to work, to and from work, or to and from health services. We are pleased to announce a recent partnership with RCC, where we are providing free rides to all RCC campuses for students with valid IDs, and that program is really taking off quickly. We're up to over 300 students served and we just launched it
January 13th,
January 13th, so we're very happy about that.
and that's overall,
Right.
overall.
Yeah, overall to all campuses.
Yeah.
And then we also provide our New Freedom and Med-Caring programs to those who need medical transportation outside of the service area. And Bay Transit, we are requesting a 1% increase over last year. The Housing Choice Voucher Program is requesting level funding. And we are, once again, thank you very much for your support over the years. It's been a great partnership, and we look forward to increasing and continuing our service.
Let's start this end. Any questions, Bill?
Yes. Can you go a little more detail, not an hour speech or anything, but into the aging and dementia, what do you all?
So we are, it's a program from a federal or a national organization called Dementia Friendly America. And they have a set of guidelines that help communities gain the designation of a dementia-friendly community. And there are all kinds of things that we are encouraging, and it begins with education. And so we go to businesses, for example, and law enforcement, first responders, others, and say, here's a packet of initial education that you can provide about dementia, what it means to have dementia, certain packets of helping and interacting with people with dementia, basically raising awareness of the issue. I think the stats that I heard at the meeting last week were that between 30 and 80% of people 80 and over will experience some form of dementia. It's also, it's a community-based program. So right now we're in the process of gathering input as to what the community needs might be, and what the community would like to see in terms of resources. One thing that came up last week was a potential group sessions for caregivers, so that they could share their experiences and very isolated as a caregiver in these situations. So trying to do something like that. But it's in its early stages, but we are very committed to following the guidelines of Orange County.
I'm extremely familiar with the situation, and I tell you, it's not a whole lot out there really often. That's why I was there.
Right.
No, thanks for coming out. We appreciate what you continue to do for people that need in the community.
Yeah, you know, y'all definitely do a lot of good work. I'd also like to thank those 9 King William County volunteers. It's a good thing. Thank you.
And the one thing I will ask you, if by chance you know of anyone, Medicare is looking for a volunteer. So if you have any, we do not have a Medicare volunteer in King William County. So if you have anyone that may be interested, please have them contact us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item we have on the agenda is fiscal year 2021 budget request for the Rappahannock Community College. Dr. Shannon Kennedy, president. Oh, maybe not.
I'm just your escort.
Okay. Oh, okay.
I'm Kathy Morrison, I'm the representative that you appointed to RCC. And I've had the pleasure of working with RCC now for 7 years, and Dr. Shannon Kennedy is their new president who took the helm July 1. And we're quite excited about some things that are happening, and she's glad to be here to talk to you about all the things RCC does. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Shannon.
Thank you. I do want to thank you for Kathy. She is one of our most engaged board members. We have 12, one from each county. She actually chairs our finance committee, which is the committee that meets the most regularly and has the most to do. So I do appreciate Kathy. I'd also like to say Kathy and her husband have started a endowed scholarship at RCC specifically for a King William student. So thank you for that too. I want to thank all of you for your continued support of Rappahannock Community College, especially for last year. For those of you that have been on the board for a while, you know that we were level funded from 15 through 19, and last year you did give us an increase, and we really appreciate that. Our request is for 8808, which is a 2% increase over last year. You have a packet with a lot more detailed information about what we fund. What I wanted to talk a little bit about is some of the things that we're doing at RCC. I wasn't going to say this first, but since we follow Bay Aging and Bay Transit, I do want to talk about that partnership. Bay Transit did put in a bus shelter at Glens and Warsaw. We actually had 243 actual rides in January. They are actually charging the $1.20 per ride, but our educational foundation is paying for that. So we've worked that out with the valid IDs so that our students are riding for free. We expect 12 new students just because of the having transportation in our adult ed program, that's the GED. That's significant because those are students that really have multiple barriers and they can't really do much of anything without that high school equivalency. So one student told our adult regional education specialist last week that she's unemployed and without the free transportation she would not be able to attend, and she is coming to class 4 days a week, so she will be getting that GED soon. This year is a very big year for us. It is our 50th anniversary. On January the 9th, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first meeting of our local board. Back then we were formed with 13 counties because we had to have a minimum of 100,000 population, and it took 13 counties to get that. And Caroline was the one at some point, and I don't know the history of that yet, but Caroline went with Germanna, but then the other 12 counties have remained, and that's how we were formed and why we are the way we are. But we've had one celebration already on the 11th with an open house at our Glens campus, and in October, I think it's October the 2nd, we will have one at our Warsaw campus. So please feel free to come anytime and see what we have going on at our campus. I had the privilege of being out here and touring the county with Kathy last week, so enjoyed getting to meet some of you as well. So highlights from last year. Our faculty and staff participate in a survey program. And this, for the 5th straight year, we were chosen as a great college to work for. We served 703 students from King William County. That's the total of our college credit courses, our dual enrollment students, and students in our short-term workforce programs. King William students received financial aid totaling more than $198,000. This year, 8 King William students received 15 scholarships from the RCC Foundation totaling over $36,000. You have some materials that we have left it for you, not just the packet, but a couple of things. This is what we call a review book that gives you can look at all this stuff later. This is our course schedule for the spring. It's mainly our workforce courses, but there's some other programs highlighted in here, so that will give you a little bit more information about some of what we're offering. And then this piece is, we're actually, as part of our 50th anniversary, conducting a capital campaign. And I shared this with you because you can kind of see the direction we're moving in as a college. We're looking at a more holistic approach to serving our students. And what I mean by that is we're not just looking at academics, we're looking at the whole person. So that might mean transportation through Bay Transit. We've started food pantries on all of our campuses and sites this year, and that is run entirely of 18 volunteer faculty and staff that are running those food pantries. We are, again, raising funds for scholarships, and we are also doing more hand-holding. It's advising, it's called proactive and intrusive advising, but we're making sure students that are really guided through the process of college. It's complicated. If you've helped filled out the FAFSA, the Federal Financial Aid application anytime lately, you will know. I think it's complicated, and I'm a higher education professional. So we're trying to make sure we get our students. We have a lot of first-generation students who don't necessarily have the support system. So that's some of the things that we're doing. And we're also looking at expanding our nursing program, and to do that, we're raising money to fund an endowment so we can hire another full-time faculty member. But that is one of our largest programs, and we're very proud of that because the folks in healthcare can get jobs in our service region, and we are trying to help folks get jobs in our service region and not have to allocate. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
The increase, what will it be used for?
We use it to everything but that 5-foot rule, so things for parking, any kind of pothole repair, some of those facilities. We have a wastewater treatment plant at the Glens campus because we can't connect to any public water. So that maintains that. So just some inflation to cover the cost of those things.
That's what I thought. Most of it was infrastructure.
Yes, so the grounds, we can't use state funds to do anything with the grounds and that kind of thing. Thank you.
No, I'm impressed with what you guys have been able to do in the years that everybody was kind of forced to level fund throughout the region. Mr. Moore and I got a nice tour maybe 2 years ago of the nursing facility there, which is top notch, which what I saw rivals any 4-year program that I've seen. The workforce programs with machine operation, welding, and some of the partnerships that you guys have been able to build through Go Virginia have been very impressive. And then personally, you guys have been great for our family. I've got a brother and a sister that both have RCC degrees that went on. One's got a master's from UVA, one's got a 4-year degree from William & Mary. Saved our family a tremendous amount of money, and I know that it's a service that's been utilized by a lot of people in the county, and the dual enrollment program that continues to grow as well. So, I thank you guys for being such the asset that you are to King William and to the region. We're really happy to have the level of service that we have.
Thank you.
I really like what you're doing with King William High School. And got to tour the other day and at the doctor, but anything you can do to expand opportunities there as well, especially for adult education. I know it's kind of slacked off a bit, but I'd really like to see them expand adult education before we come back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm new to the board. I had no idea that there was the 703 residents served in King William County. That's good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your partnership. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. Next item on the agenda is 4D, Resolution 20-04, to approve additional fire and emergency medical services personnel in fiscal year 2020. Natasha Langston, Council Finance Director.
Good evening. Resolution 2004 is presented tonight for the board's approval for funding of 3 additional full-time fire medics for fire and EMS. This will add to the current 6 full-time positions for fire medics. The new hires will be fully certified fire and EMT providers, which will reduce the time to adapt to the county fire and EMS method of providing service. The county's intent is to have 3 providers per shift. The additional full-time staff will reduce the amount overtime currently paid out to provide 3 providers per shift with the current full-time and part-time staff. The projected cost total is $62,688 for salaries and benefits, which we are requesting to be funded from the general fund unassigned monies. Request approval of resolution 2004.
So, gentlemen, of course, I was the one that moved the table this last time, in light of some questions that were asked that I thought were getting answers. Since then, I've had an opportunity to have a conversation with the chief and ask those questions, and they've been answered to my satisfaction. And then we're all, again, we're made aware of the situation that we encountered last week during, a lot of sick call-outs due to flu, and then a lot of increased calls for the same reason, and the staffing issues that created. So I am of the opinion that this is needed and is the right thing to do, and I'm satisfied moving forward, adopting Resolution 2004, and I'll make a motion that we do so.
Motion and properly seconded. Is there any other discussion from the rest of the board? Seeing none. Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. Motion passes. Next item we have on the agenda is item 4E, appropriating fiscal year 2020 restricted general funds to King William County Public Schools Capital Fund and reimburse the fiscal year 2020 county budget for King William County's public schools expenditures. Natasha Langston, Finance Director, looks like, and also it looks like Dr. White, Superintendent of King William County Public Schools.
Good evening, Chairman Greenwood, board members, Ms. Castanary. Dr. Jarvis will be handing out some information on the appropriation request. I would ask, however, if it please the board, that we table the resolution and just speak to the current appropriation request until we can have further discussion with the county administrator. What we're asking for, you see before you, is a memo requesting funding to replace the intercom system at Cool Spring Primary School. It does pose a significant safety concern, as the school cannot alert staff and students in case of an emergency. The cost that we've gotten from our vendor is actually $86,178, and we're requesting this appropriation from the split levy funds in order that we may go ahead and make immediate repairs. The system is out of date, and they don't even make some of the parts to replace in order for us to make repairs to the system, so it would be a replacement.
Okay. So this is the sole source thing that we're going on here?
No, CTSI is actually a contract vendor.
Yes.
Okay.
Was originally they were asking for 100,000, weren't they?
Well, we estimated about 90,000, but we wanted to come in with an exact number for you. Yeah. provide some savings as well.
And this will be the total, the 8612.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so the additional amounts that we had requested for reimbursement for the county, Dr. White would like to sit down with us and go through those numbers again, specifically about the implementation of Edmunds. The school would like to talk to us more about that. It's the new financial software that we all, based on resolution, we have to have that shared together. So they would like to talk more about the costs on that and also the shared audit service.
Yes.
We want to go ahead and discuss that split that we provided with them in a little bit more further detail too. Other than that, the other costs that are in the attachment A, those are true costs that we are asking the school to reimburse the county for. They're costs that over the last couple of years, I've noticed that the county has been funding, and the county cannot continue to fund those large expenses. The large one that is really sticking out is the schools have 79 radios in their buses, and that's roughly $1,500 a year for us to provide Hanover and Motorola service. Each radio is what we look at. Yeah, that's the cost that the county incurs. So that is something that I've brought to his attention, that we need to start looking at getting that reimbursed, or talking more of maybe what we're going to do with that expense too. They've already talked about maybe pulling the radios from the buses and using cell phones rather than having those radios, which is, it wouldn't affect anything with Motorola projects that's coming up. That's not going to affect anything with the county. It just will not be a cost to them for those 79 radios any longer.
Do they suffer the same coverage as the sheriff's department and EMS? And the blanket?
I'm sure, yeah, absolutely. Dead area is a dead area for us.
It's the same system.
Yes, exact same system.
Is this intercom system, is that a wireless system or is that a hardwired
It is
system?
a hardwired system, so they're gonna have to go in and take out all the pre-existing and rework the entire project. So
It may be too exotic for a quick fix, but I would love to see something done with the broadband, able to run this over the broadband, internet services. There's gotta be a way to do it. You need something.
immediate, yes.
No, we're good with that, and if staff is good with continuing that discussion, then we can go ahead and move forward, I think. So what we would have then, if I'm butchering this good enough, is we'd end up with resolution 2008R. So someone follow along here and make sure this makes sense to everybody. So 2008R would read appropriating FY 2020 restricted general funds to the King William County Public Schools Capital Fund. Whereas the King William County Board of Supervisors at the October 7, 2019 board meeting was presented with the fiscal year 2019 special school tax district property tax levies and non-split levy reconciliation, and whereas the Director of Financial Services prepares the annual reconciliation of revenue collected in the prior fiscal year that will be reflected within the general fund is restricted for King William County Public Schools use. And whereas the fiscal year 2019 reconciliation designated $610,000, et cetera, for use within the general fund and is cited in the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report Balance Sheet Exhibit 3. And whereas the King William County Public Schools has requested up to $100,000 for an emergency procurement of the intercom system at Cold Springs Primary School. And then we would delete the next two whereas. We would delete line 30, 31, and 32. Line 33 would become 5, 10, 6, 17, 75. And then the therefore would read, therefore be it resolved by the King William County Board of Supervisors this 24th day of February 2020. The Board of Supervisors appropriates up to an additional $100,000 to the King William County Public School Capital Fund to address the emergency procurement of the intercom system at Cool Springs Primary School.
Make sure you edit it a little more to give the exact number that they showed here, or keep it at $100,000.
We can, I'm sure, do that. I'm just trying to make sure that we've got somewhat the language smithing correct to revise and pass this resolution.
Josh, what would you prefer, exact, or just leaving it rounded off?
Let's just do exact.
That changes the picture.
Mr.
Yes.
I would note that it is Cool Springs and not Cold Springs.
Where's that? Oh, right, at the last, Cool Springs instead of Cold, right? Yeah, right. Any other?
So we've got that on line 18 and line 38.
18, oh, it's got a line there too, yep. Change 100 to 86.
Change the dollar amount in line 28,
It's not quite cold, cool.
Right, yeah.
86, 170.
86, 178.
17.
Oh, 117.
No, on line 7.
Oh, okay, 86, 178.
And then the total would be.
Line 27 is going to stay the same, but line 33 is going to be the one, and we're going to have to edit that again as well to reflect that.
Are these not to exceed or cost plus type?
Well, I'm sorry, I've got to proceed. This is what I was-
As far as the intercom,
We're being told this is the worst case scenario, so we will only use whatever funds we need to fix the system. So we're being told from the vendor that looked at it, this is worst case.
Okay, so y'all are comfortable with it being capped at this time?
yes.
So then, yeah, somebody mapped out what line 32 would be, and then we're good to go, I think. All right.
Did you make a motion, or did you just make?
Well, if everybody agrees to that as to form is correct, then I'll make a motion, we adopt 2008R.
I'll second.
We have a motion made and properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? This is,
Lars.
no, new names are really married.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. Next item on the agenda, we have item 4F, amending the fiscal year 2020 budget to incorporate prior year appropriated capital funds. Natasha Langston again, Director of Finance, you may lose stay up.
I wanted to bring before the board a request to grant a draft resolution to present for consideration reappropriation of unencumbered capital improvement plan balances at year-end 2019. We have a balance of $684,618.09 from prior year's capital fund balance that I would like to request be appropriated to spend in fiscal year 2020 to cover anticipated expenses as approved in prior year's budgets. Attachment A reflects the breakdown of the request. And as you can see, we still have our $2 million in infrastructure, but until we have a need where we would need that expense, I won't ask to appropriate that in 2020 because when we have that need is when I will probably come to you and say, hey, I need that. And then we also have the 225 for broadband initiative, but that is included in the 684 that I'm requesting. Moving forward, when we work on the budget too, we will do this every year too. Any amount that you had appropriated through the year that we didn't encumber, we will go ahead and ask you to roll that forward too.
No, I mean, it makes sense, so, that's fine, I'll go ahead and move approval of resolution 2009.
Second. A motion made, properly seconded to approve resolution 20-09. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Lawrence?
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Moran?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. Next item we have on the agenda, 4G, presentation of fiscal year 2021 capital request. Natasha Langston, Director of Financial Services. Maybe just stay up. Oh, that's right, we are, it is G. Yeah. Oh,
it's in the place.
H.
Yeah.
You got it?
It's this one, it was right over top of the,
It's a little more shaded, that has 4G written in red, top corner, I think it was added.
should be at your place. It wasn't in the package, it was handed out.
That wasn't in the packet.
4K.
H.
What, I might have misplaced it.
Well, it's a,
Yeah, I'll just put it there. Did you get from yours?
I didn't either. Some people do, some people don't.
No, me. Wow.
That's H, and I, J, K.
Maybe somebody else could have had it.
Yeah.
Misplaced it.
I think the chairman's missing his.
Okay, before you is a summary of some of the needs, projects that we have coming, that have come forward working through the budget process for fiscal year 2021 for a 5-year capital improvement plan. Motorola Tower project for $4.6 million to be funded from the capital debt financing. The anticipated completion date for the project is January 2021. During the project, we will draw down the funds from bond proceeds as needed. Let's see, then we have the fire and rescue equipment. We're looking for $303,303. Lots of threes there. Over the next 3 years, we would like to build a capital fund to purchase a fire engine. And we've met with several different engine companies, and that they have provided us quotes for $550,000 is what we're looking at for a new engine. We also would like to continue funding $120,000 for County Fire Rescue, West Point Volunteer Fire and Rescue, Mango Volunteer Fire and Rescue to assist with capital needs for equipment. Then we have our vehicle replacements. There's a need for 2 law enforcement cruisers that would include upfitting with equipment, 1 4x4 facility vehicle, and the purchase of a utility trailer for law enforcement for a total of $164,300. We have software and equipment. The Sheriff's Office mobile computers used for transmitting dispatch information to patrol units in the field are outdated and replacements are necessary. We're looking at a cost of $130,000 for that. We also have the need for implementation of a new assessor software for $95,000 that will improve efficiency and link with GIS to limit discrepancies. And then we have the cleaning and painting of Central Garage Water Tower. This need has been in our capital improvement plan for the last couple of years and will be placed in 2023's fiscal year CIP expenses for $167,000. The build out of the courthouse wing, this also has been included in CIP the previous years. The anticipated cost was estimated $330,000. We have updated that amount to $300,000 due to the in-house staff currently that would provide assistance in the renovations. That expense we are looking at to have in 2020. The broadband initiative and capital investment in infrastructure continue to retain monies in the capital fund that have been appropriated in prior years for capital fund projects. We were just talking about that, the broadband, we have $225,000, and infrastructure, we have $2 million that is set aside right now in the capital fund. Radio replacement, Motorola has suggested a 7-year radio replacement cycle for our existing inventory, 322 radios. Radios, what makes up that inventory is law enforcement for both county and town, fire and EMS for county, West Point volunteer, Mangapick volunteer, Walkerton volunteer, the school bus radios, and West Point administration. I wanted to go ahead and kind of make sure that everyone understood that the inventory that for Motorola is the county's inventory too. So that's why we're looking at a $230,000 per year over the next 4 years cost to us. The miscellaneous capital needs include Station 1 parking lot repairs, HVAC replacements, completion of the carpet replacement in the administration complex, sheriff's office impound lot, renovation of front counters for the treasurer and the commissioner's office, and deferred maintenance repairs for McAllister Building, Juvenile Building, and Courthouse Complex. We have met with the schools and discussed King William County Public Schools capital needs to include school buses, service vehicles, information technology, infrastructure, and security, classroom/cafeteria furniture, and HVAC units for an estimate of $1.8 million is what they're looking for. Do you have any questions?
Of course.
Bill?
Okay. The fire engine, where will it be assigned?
I'm sorry?
Where will the fire engine be assigned?
That will be at Station 1.
Station. And you want me to keep going, or you going down the line and come back?
You can just finish yours while you're there, and then we'll move along.
Okay, the replacement of outdated mobile computers, that will do all of them, correct?
That is going to do the majority of them. He wants to work through, and then we'll replace a few others in the next few years. And we are looking, I do need to throw out, the finance department is actually starting to reach out and do some research on grants. So we're talking with Panasonic, talking to them to see if they can work with us, getting a grant for that. Tripp Lawrence has been reaching out with Motorola, different grants for fire and EMS that would actually assist us in things like that also, so.
I just have two more. The area of the courthouse, what's going to occupy that? Just for the public, really, as well. You know what your plan is?
DJ Triple CA,
That's what I think.
and then John Heath's department, we'll replace John Heath for the juvenile.
So where we have the juvenile, we're in the juvenile building, we're going to move that group over there.
And the last one, we own the property that the impound lot will be on?
Yes.
This is just to grade it, fence it, that's all
We do not have anything in here for the properties that we're going to be purchasing in ALED. Is that something we should be looking at, or are we funding that from a different?
Oh, for the deferred maintenance, things like that?
No, the pharmacy, specifically the retrofitting and all that we'll be doing there.
Okay. The social services will be giving out, they will be funding $100,000 towards that property to fit that for social services. We did not put anything in there for the sheriff's office yet, and that does not include the 360 property.
$225,000 for the broadband initiative. That, we can use that for broadband initiative.
Correct, yes.
So,
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
so if we need, Ed will touch on that. No, if we need a study to get a grant,
Yes,
we can use that for the study.
yes. That's what that money was set aside
Yeah.
for 3 years ago.
The Yeah, we've had that money sitting in that fund for a while. You know, heretofore, we haven't had really any partners to go out and seek these grants with. Mr. Moore and I were talking last week even about, you know, getting our partners lined up and geared up for the next round of body and things like that. They're gonna be coming around, so if we need, yes, if we feel that we need technical assistance or something that they can't provide, perhaps we could use those funds for something like that. But, yeah, that's what it's there for. It's not so much for broadband, direct broadband build out, because obviously that's nowhere near the amount of money that you would need, but for the types of things that we would need to, yeah, to try to win grants and do things like that.
But it would still have to come back to the board for approval.
Yes, absolutely.
Curious, utility trailer, if we could get some parameters as to what size, weight, et cetera, I'd sure like to consider a local donation or perhaps someone to purchase that for the county. If we could get some parameters, what the requirements are.
I was wondering on the number you had here for the radio replacement, does that include what we were talking about earlier with the school buses? Or if
That
we
would
didn't
change
use that anymore,
dramatically.
I was gonna say that might
Yes,
change.
if they decide not to use those
This
79
number
radios,
would- Okay,
that will
that's
go
what I
away.
wanna make sure too, okay. And then I mentioned in one of our previous meetings about the fire engine, have we looked, and you probably just said it about, you know, another person looking at fire engine grants, maybe not, it's not the same person that does the grants for other things. And maybe even donating, like maybe Karina helping with it, or have we looked into that? I know we mentioned it, but I don't know.
We are trying every angle
Okay,
right
all right,
now.
I thought
We
you were,
we
all right.
really are, so yeah, no, Tripp is doing he's doing an amazing job going out there and making, and networking with our vendors, with other localities, things like that, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would also suggest someone to reach out to our two nationally recognized Indian tribes to use their resources and perhaps avenues to look into monies.
Any others? I guess this was just information, nothing to,
This is just some information, that's correct, yeah, this will be part of what we talk about at town hall, at the town hall meeting tomorrow night, yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Next item on the agenda, we have 4H, presentation of the classification and compensation review. Ms. Bobby Tassinari, County Administrator, and Ms. Natasha Langston, Director of Financial Services, and Nita McIntyre, Human Resource Manager.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'd also like to include Lydia Lawrence. She was part of the work group along with Natasha and Nita and myself. We decided to take a look at the compensation and classification plan back this summer. We convened our work session in August. We had many, many meetings. We did a great deal of research. We contacted other localities. We looked at documentation that other localities had paid private companies to develop for them, the way that they evaluated, the way they surveyed, the way they classified. Because it's become very apparent that we do have some compression issues, that we are also having a difficult time in some departments recruiting. And of course, I'm sure you know that it's going to be fire and EMS and law enforcement are the main issues. So what you have in front of you is several months of very hard work. The document that was emailed to y'all and presented is our shot at being a private consultant for the county. What we did is we stepped back. We had already processed all of the job description reevaluation about 18 months ago in preparation for implementing a performance evaluation system, which we implemented last February. So we had already taken that step. Then what we did is we took a look at our pay bands and our pay grades and realized that there wasn't a great deal of consistency in the way it was applied. There also wasn't a great deal of consistency in the way that hourly rates were calculated. for our part-timers. So what we decided to do was simplify. Our original classification is 40 grades, and they range from anywhere from 3.81% to 6% between the ranges. There was just no real consistency. What we also found is that you have a min, a mid, and a max, and our bands were very, very narrow. We have small departments. We have people that may never promote up. You know, they're very satisfied with what they're doing, or there may just not be the opportunities to promote up until someone retires, which could be 15, 18 years down the road. So what we wanted to do was be able to broaden that min, mid, and max to a 60%, which is what we did, and then we standardized between each grade. We went to a 6%. So after looking at the job descriptions, we pulled all the salary information, we pulled all the department information, we decided to do an e-survey. You have an example of that in this handout, just so that you see the extent that we requested information. The employees were all asked to fill out the survey. It then went to the department heads, who reviewed it to make sure that it adequately described the jobs and responsibilities. It came to us, the work group evaluated it, classified it, and then after that, we took it back to the department heads to show them where we had reclassified their positions and took their input and did make some changes off of department head input. We also went out and we looked at who our competitors are. And as much as it would be nice to look at King, Queen, and Essex and other counties, the reality is that's not who we compete with. We compete with Caroline County and York, and we compete with Hanover and New Kent. And so we did a comparison of positions. And in the spreadsheet of the tables that showed the comparisons, anytime there was a blank, it was an area where we just couldn't find something compatible. But we did look at their job descriptions to marry them up with the positions that we had to ensure that they correlated. So after going through all of that, we classified the positions, we adjusted the pay ranges, and what we determined was that we really don't want to do this very often. It's an awful lot of work, it takes a lot of discussion. It's a real challenge to be fair and consistent in a survey like this. So what we decided to do was the standard classified positions are graded from 2 to 27. We decided to separate out law enforcement, and we decided to separate out fire and rescue. Primarily because fire and rescue and law enforcement are going to be the ones that change more frequently. We are competing with other localities that seem to raise their salary scales yearly when it comes to these. And we just cannot be without our deputies, and we cannot be without, EMTs. So we separated out the law enforcement and the fire and rescue for the simple fact that it would be easier if those need to be tweaked or amended, that small section of the pay class can be brought back to the board for review and input, rather than having to look at the entire whole thing again. So you have all of this information in front of you. We also decided to standardize a lot of titles. You'll see that we've created deputy 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, program specialist 1s, 2s, and 3s. Where the names or the titles need to be specific, we left them as such. But after speaking to the majority of the department heads, they all seemed extremely pleased with the results. What happened is, because of course we are recommending an increase for law enforcement and fire and rescue for entry-level salaries to be competitive, that is going to impact about 26 positions to bring them up to the minimum new range. That would be effective July 1st as part of the FY21 budget. And that's why this was done now, so that y'all could review it and let us know if this is something that y'all are amenable to. If you're not, we can just table this and continue on with what we have in place now. If you are amenable to it, then what will happen is the Director of Finance will build these changes into the FY21 budget, and those 26 positions that are being impacted to bring them up to the new minimum salary will be incorporated at that new salary as of July 1st into the new budget. And I did include on page 12 of that document, all of the departments that would be impacted. And of course, as you see, primarily it's the sheriff's office and fire and EMS. We're standardizing the managers. One thing that I've noticed over the last several years is that when I came to the county, managers were graded at varying different grades. They had primarily the same responsibilities. So what we've done is standardize the manager's grade, and we've standardized the chief deputy's grades, and just tried to make things a little bit cleaner and easier to understand. As part of this, we also looked at our fringe benefits, because that's generally what an outside consultant would do. And thankfully, the board had taken action within the last 12 months on addressing the annual leave for fire and EMS and for law enforcement. That put us leaps and ahead of other localities, so we're doing very well there. But when it comes to holiday leave, the different types of paid leave, other types of leave, we are right there with Hanover, Caroline, Lucan, exactly where we want to be. We also offer all kinds of deferred compensations, AFLAC, flexible spending plans, just like every other locality. So I'm very proud of our benefits package. It's a very good one. We are possibly looking at expanding it with long-term disability, but we are reviewing the numbers at this point to see if that is viable. That would impact the Plan 1 and 2 employees, but the hybrids already have that. So this is our presentation on the review that we've completed. I'm very interested to hear your comments. You'll see that if you're looking at the comparisons, that in some cases we may have classified positions here in the county a little bit higher. Most times, though, it was a little bit lower or as comparable as we could get for the responsibilities. Do you have any questions?
I do. A first line supervisor in fire, I have never have understood this, appears to be a lieutenant. And in the sheriff's office or police department is a sergeant. Why is his salary different than his first line? Or is my definition incorrect?
So an F2 in the fire and EMS is a paramedic basic, a BMT. And an L2 in law enforcement is a deputy sheriff. When you move up to a senior deputy, that goes to the L3, which is $44,500 entry salary. Then the lieutenant is $47,500. And basically, in the fire and rescue, your EMTs, paramedics, B, intermediate, and paramedic go up to $46,500, and then that goes to a lieutenant at $50,500. You're right, it is higher.
Yeah, but, and it happens many times. I've seen these studies before, and let me tell you, y'all done a great job here. This is tremendous. It's a lot of work. And it was very much needed, the rest of the board. I mean, it was just skewed. It really needed to be straightened out.
Yeah, this was quite an exhaustive study, so thanks to everyone on the work group that worked on this. I've sat here and advocated for, how long now, Stephen? 9 years? That, we struggle to adequately compensate people in a lot of these positions, especially sub-management positions. So I'm happy this was done. I think it's revealed probably things we already knew, and I'm happy to support it.
I went to the VACO meeting Thursday and I spoke to the Supervisor Black from Caroline County. They have the same problem that we do, losing people. To them, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania. You know, this will help, for sure, hopefully, to keep some people here. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're still going to be in competition with the larger localities. It's a good study. It's good.
You, I keep, you made a statement that we're focusing on sheriff's deputies, excuse me, loud, I get criticized for not talking. Are we focusing on recruiting sheriff's deputies or retaining? Is it one over the other, is it spread?
It's both. It really is both, because what, and I don't want to speak for the sheriff, but please chime in. What we're finding is that if we hire someone on, they get some experience, and then they immediately go elsewhere where they can receive $4,000 or $5,000 more pay salary.
And I just out of pure curiosity, why so many pay grades? The delineation is very,
Well, we thought we were doing a good job cutting it down.
Cutting it
But you know, we went ahead and split them up just because we wanted the consistency of the, 6% between bands. But at the same time, as we're finding, we're needing new positions. And so those give us a little bit more flexibility with the pay.
I was wondering, you said if we just stick with the fire and EMS and the sheriff's department, it's going to be $54,080 to implement that, to bring them all up for right now, and then.
Yes, and there are a few that are in some other departments.
Yeah, that would fix it all.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, right, but that hasn't been included in the budget yet, that would be maybe.
That would be depending upon your
Right,
feeling about this.
passes.
Okay, yeah.
Just let me say one thing, this will not affect my salary before you vote on anything.
We won't do it now.
I knew you wouldn't do anything that would affect mine. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve resolution 20-10. Travis, tell them all the rest.
Yeah.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion made, properly seconded, is there any more discussion?
I'd like to ask HR, how do you intend to communicate this to employees in a positive ways?
When it's passed, we will send out the whole study so that they can, obviously have my door open to explain to any of them with their input from the surveys, how that helped fuel this and how that gives them the opportunity to grow within their position.
Thank you. We have a motion made, properly seconded, Ms. Lawrence, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. Motion passes, thank you. Next item we have on the agenda is 4I, presentation of updates to the King William County Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual. Nita McIntyre, Human Resource Manager.
Tonight, I'd like to present a recommendation for revisions to the county's personnel policies and procedures manual. There is a packet that lists all of them, and I'll just review them. Chapter 2, classification, section 2.1, under employment categories, will remove the term permanent as it refers to employment. All employees are at-will employees for an indefinite amount of time, and no employment contract exists. Therefore, no one should be referred to as permanent. In this same section, we also address the hours expected of part-time employees. Chapter 3, in the pay plan, section 3.2, in definitions, we clarify performance review dates since we have implemented a performance review system. Section 3.15, premium pays. We're eliminating the on-call pay category as this is no longer used. Chapter 10, disciplinary policy, section 10.5, available disciplinary action. We added language to clarify that all steps of progressive discipline are not required to be followed depending upon the nature or seriousness of the problem being addressed. Chapter 11, grievance policy and procedures, section 11.4, coverage. We're removing the term permanent as it refers to employment. Chapter 12, separation and termination, section 12.7, clearing debt and property accounts. We're correcting language which addresses the return of county property at separation and an employee's final paycheck. Chapter 13, miscellaneous employment policies. Section 13.2 for hours of work, it's amended to include language referring to part-time employees. Section 13.10, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is updated to reflect the Human Resources Manager to be the ADA coordinator instead of the county administrator. And Section 13.27, electronic communications and social media, the personal use section is updated to provide additional clarification of potential repercussions during personal use of social media by county employees. Do you have any questions?
Of course.
As I was,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
awesome.
No, I started to start that.
Yes, as I was going through this, it's kind of struck me, is this appropriate to have an organizational chart here,
As far as the,
laying out all the departments in the county and stuff?
it has never been included in the personnel manual, I guess because it changes. We could certainly look at including that.
Is it appropriate, Ms. Tyson, from your background?
I don't know, I don't know whether it's in auditorium or.
Don't need names, but just.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just as you add departments and structure changes,
But this is
it
a
would be
living,
updated.
this is a living document.
Right. We can certainly look at it. I had
I would
reviewed other
think that an
counties.
organizational chart is probably more appropriate in a budget document than it would be in this type of manual. And that's traditionally where it's been presented and included in our documents year over year. Because again, there's lots of changes being made to that, and that's an annual review of kind of our stock of what we have. So, we do have and keep an organizational chart, and it is presented in the budget, and in my mind, that's where it's most appropriate, is in that document as opposed to in the HR manual.
In reviewing other localities around us, I did not see one in any of their manuals.
I have a question, but it doesn't refer to any of the changes. The drug testing policy, is that a random?
It is in the manual that every new hire is drug tested, and then depending on if there's a reason or even.
Come under suspicion?
Yes, if there is an accident, any kind of property damage while somebody's on duty, all new full-time employees and part-time employees sign a random drug screening.
It's not a physical ongoing thing where if you might determine you need to do 50 a year, it would be random.
We have not before. We haven't just randomly done it as that's an.
Just a question.
It's an additional cost.
That's what we used to do, whatever work.
Yeah.
No, really no questions in my reading through everything.
And I really don't have an argument with it. Just, can you explain 2-1, paragraph 2, why it was changed? I think it's quite, it's pretty much the beginning.
Position classification plan?
Regular part-time position.
Oh, regular part-time. The regular part-time is somebody who has they establish a schedule as opposed to the seasonal part-time or as-needed part-time, which is just you come in as you're needed if you're called upon.
But why did you take the hours? I'm just asking.
I took out the at least 20 hours because we do have certain people that don't work 20 hours in a week. Our fire and EMS, if our part-time employees might only be able to do a 12-hour shift one week, but the following week they might do 36 hours. So it is varied depending upon what you're needed and what your schedule allows.
Okay, and does this apply to the sheriff's department?
This does not apply to the sheriff's department.
Okay, I don't have.
They have their own separate policy for that.
I was reading the county vehicle takeover. It said only at night, and I know that varies for the sheriff's department.
Yes.
I didn't think it did. That's all I have.
Only other, I guess, question that I did have, but it's ringing in my ear. I swear, having my school shut. Traditionally, we've had any changes to this manual reviewed by the county attorney. We don't.
We sent it through Versa, which is our insurance company. They offer us consulting attorneys to review any personnel changes, HR changes, and we have done that.
Only if the county attorney thinks it's necessary.
Just our county attorney thinks it's necessary.
Well, everything I've seen in here is consistent with what we have done in the past in such reviews, so I don't think that would be necessary.
Fantastic.
Anything else?
If
Thank you.
If this is approved, then we will draft a resolution to bring to you on the 24th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, they did.
Next item we have on the agenda, 4J, presentation of tax levies, Bobby Castanary, County Administrator.
I swear, my head's gonna explode, so sure.
Is it traffic? It's not, I don't think it's these.
Let's
It's something else. I don't think it's these either.
I don't know. I think
It sounds like it's over there.
Go away earlier.
One at a time.
Yeah. Let's just see if we can improve that, because I can't take it from there. All right, well, then we'll turn them
Everybody leave and
Somebody's got jamming equipment or something.
You know,
It's getting worse, yeah.
But right, I mean, well, we get, I mean, these mics come through up there, and it's not coming from over there, it's coming.
No, over here, somewhere. Sounds like that.
It felt like that to you, it's coming right from up there somewhere.
Really?
Yeah. From sitting
Okay,
It's all around here.
back to the topic at hand. Gentlemen, what I'm going to be presenting tonight is information on the real property tax rate. As you're aware, the reassessment is going on and will be finalized the end of this year, this calendar year, 2020, which will then impact our fiscal year 21 budget. And I will confuse y'all immensely with how that's going to lay out. Just something to consider when we're talking through these slides. Caroline County, their current calendar year 2019 tax rate is 83 cents per 100. Essex County is 88 cents per 100. Hanover County is 81 cents. And New Kent County is 82 cents. So for proposed 2020 calendar year, our 2019 rate is 86 cents per 100, and what the real property includes is real estate, which is what the reassessment is going to impact, mines and minerals, public service corporation, and mobile homes. And I will tell you that mines and minerals and public service corporations are not increasing. They are pretty much staying level, hopefully with no downturn. We have had a downturn in both of those categories over the last 2 fiscal years. The county town rate is 38 cents per 100. So what that means is that out of every 86 cents, the county gets to keep 38 cents on real estate. The town submits their portion of the 38 cents, and then the King William County Public Schools receives 48 cents of that 86 cents per 100. So for the 2020 tax calendar year, I'm proposing that we remain at 86 cents per 100. We're not going to make any changes to the county and town rate, which is at 38 cents, and the King William County Public Schools will remain at 48 cents. And I'll explain that a little further. This is how we come up with our projections for our fiscal year. So in April, you will approve calendar year 2020 tax levies. That's part of the budget process that occurs every year. And that will set the rates for the collections in 2020 that will occur in June and December. But our fiscal years are created from July 1st through June 30th. So what that means is that when you set the calendar year 2020 tax rate in April, the fiscal year 21 budget that y'all are going to be voting on at the same time, the first collection of tax revenue in June will be for the 2014 rate. When we get to the December collection, that's going to be at the new rate. That's a little confusing, but that's what makes projections a little challenging. We have each year reduced our tax rate by 2 cents over the last 3 to 4 years. Now we are faced with another scenario in the fact that we're going to have to anticipate a rate change in the middle of a fiscal year when the board has not voted on that. And that's what's making coming up with the budget for FY21 a little bit difficult. So here is my recommendation, and I don't make this recommendation lightly. I know it's going to be something will probably bring a lot of conversation to your doorstep. And if you disagree, then what we will need to do is get your input over the next 2 to 3 weeks as we work through the budget process to determine as a board what your appetite is for moving forward in funding the 21 fiscal year. So the Code of Virginia basically states that when a reassessment is done, the locality can only gain 1% in revenue unless they hold a public hearing stating that the locality needs to retain some of that additional revenue. It's done all the time. Don't know if it's ever been done here, but I will be asking you to consider that. So what you have in front of you is the booked 2019 assessed values. Okay, what makes this a little bit odd is that we are a split levy county, so it's not super simple when it comes to this. So what happens is, you see the booked value for 2019. You take that value, which is provided by the Commissioner of Revenue. She books the values in the summer and in September on the assessed rates. We take those. That's what we use to reconcile the split levy in October, and then that's what we use to project for the next fiscal year budget. So the 1.2 billion that you see there is for the county and town. County and school. The book value of 313, that is for the town. So this is something you have to understand, is that this is county and school, this is town, and so when you pull them together because of the different rates, that's the revenue coming in just for real estate, okay? Because remember, the school gets 48 cents per 100, the county gets 38 cents per 100. Okay, so if we add in, and that is not right, I meant to change that, I apologize. What that really comes up to is about 12 million, I want to say 385,000. I apologize, I'll correct that before it gets posted to the web. And that would be the 1%. So you see that it's about $130,000, $140,000 increase if we live with that 1% over the assessed value. Okay, so if we do that, then that means that we're probably going to have to drop our tax rate down to around 72 cents. Now, that sounds terrible, because the simple fact is you're going 72 cents from 86 cents, but the reality is because of the 20% increase of the reassessment, capturing that 1%, that's what it would drop to. But I am going to ask the board to seriously consider not doing that. Because if you look at the other localities that I just showed you, you see that they are in the low 80s. I do think that eventually we can get into the 70s. But there is a large amount of outstanding capital needs for the school and for the county. And we have been living under a 2014 assessment for 6 years now, which means that we've left a lot of money on the table. So I'm going to ask the board to seriously consider allowing for the 21 calendar year to just drop it to 81 cents per 100. And then moving into calendar year 2022, which would be fiscal year 23, then y'all could drop it at that point, depending upon where we stand. I know this is very confusing, and I apologize, but this is what we deal with when we're trying to come up with the numbers. But this is just a prime example. Bright Minds, who is our reassessment company, presented to the board back in March the 2018 median sales ratio. At that point, it was 80.27%. They just sent me an update in January of 2020, and it has dropped to 75.02%. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. The gap is getting worse. This picture of this residence, it's assessed on the tax rolls at $184,400. It's for sale for $234,950. I went through basically realtor pages just pulling up properties, one after the other after the other. And this is what I'm seeing is a major disparity in the fact that property is selling for more, but we have it assessed for a much lower rate. Now, Bright Minds is coming back and giving me an estimate of about 20% on residential property increasing. Not the land value, but the residential property itself. So, as you can see, for 6 years, we've been leaving an awful lot of money on the table. You know, not that dramatically amount, but over 6 years, that's what has occurred. So, I asked Bright Minds, okay, give me what you think our new values are going to be. So, that's what this is. This 1.8, that is county, town, and the schools. And if we leave it at what we're currently charging, 38 cents for the county, 48 cents for the schools, 38 cents for the town, we're looking at about 13.9 million. Now, the other slide I showed y'all was right around what, 12.3, 12.4? That's the difference that this reassessment is going to make in revenue if we do nothing except just let the money roll down. If we drop it to the 81 cents, then I would say leave the county and the town at the 38 cents because county has needs. We have been level funding ourselves, but not the schools for many years. And then drop the school from 48 to 43. The schools also have the benefit of having all of the other non-split levy categories that we can supplement. We've also paid off an awful lot of their debt over the last 2 years. Not our debt, the school's debt, to put them in a better position, which means more operational money for the schools. When we continue to level fund the county, we cannot continue to do that. So this is the calculation that you're looking at. You're probably looking at us retaining an additional $1 million if we drop it to 81 cents. Now, I do realize this is a tough ask. I do realize that. But also understand, if y'all drop this to the 72 cents, y'all are going to have to turn around and increase it, probably within the 2 years. Because all of our contracts, regional, VIPSA, jails, you name it, all continue to decline. Our staffing needs continue to climb. Our capital needs continue to climb. We're going to be looking at replacing the new courthouse roof in about 7 years, 7 or 8 years. That's around $400,000. We have a cooling tower over there that's probably going to need to be completely recommissioned. That's probably at least $250,000. Then you're talking about the schools. Their ask, Natasha had 1.8 million, but that also included what they asked to be tabled tonight. So they're asking just in 2021 for 2.2 million for capital. That's not their operations. It's not their debt service. That's capital. That's where we're at. They have, when they took out the performance contract with ABM. The need was 7 million and some change. They took out the performance contract for 4 million and some change. So they left about $3.5 million of deferred maintenance on the table because they had not been funded. Well, we, thankfully, to you guys, have addressed a lot of needs over the last, 3-4 years. But we have some major outstanding capital needs ourselves. So that's why I'm asking you at least consider this. And what I would ask is that once you get home and y'all talk and you think about it and you talk to your constituents, come back to me and ask me to get you different scenarios, run different scenarios. And I'll be glad to do that and share that. But what I'm going to need to do is have some general idea of what the board is going to be okay with before we put together our 21 budget, so that either we are not going to do certain things or we are going to do certain things. And that's my main ask. So, I've already talked about what's been left on the table. Been talked about the reassessment, how they're looking at about a 20%. That's the 3.5 million in deferred maintenance that the schools is facing that they did not take on with ABM performance contract. The Fontainebleau well and pump house, I thought I was on it. We set aside $600,000 or $700,000 for that out of the sewer and water fund. Our assessment came back from Dewberry at 1.8. So thankfully I have excellent staff. My utilities manager has reached out to HRC to determine what the cost would be for running a line rather than redoing the pump in the well. And so once we get that, then that will be brought to the board so that y'all have all of the facts in front of you. But that's just kind of what we're facing, is the costs continue to go up, and we're going to have to address them at some point. It's either long-term debt or it's pay-as-you-go, and I prefer to pay-as-you-go. And of course, our philosophy is to retain an appropriate level of unassigned general fund balance. Davenport came and did an excellent presentation about 6 to 8 months ago, trying to help the board understand how our cash flow ebbs and flows throughout the year. And because we do a lot of quarterly payments, and they're large quarterly payments, what happens is that, we have 6.7 million in unassigned sitting in our account, but we may tap down to 6 million at one time, and then it goes back up again because we get a new surge of revenue. So retaining a certain level is critical. And Natasha will be bringing to the board financial policies. That is one of the goals that we have for this year. And it's all about the fund balance, it's about capital, it's about debt, everything. So that will be something that y'all can put in place that will then instruct the finance department on what the board wants when it comes to balances and procedures. So we have, the unassigned general fund. Our population continues to grow, the demands continue to grow as we see on law enforcement and fire and rescue. Planning and zoning is busier than ever. We're having more and more mandates pushed down on us. Utility infrastructure, we're working on the national utility plan right now, and that will be brought to the board probably in May after the budget is through, so that you can see the build-out area, the projection area for future growth over the next 10 to 15 years, and make sure that y'all agree with that. And also give the community an opportunity to comment on it as well. So what I'm asking is that y'all consider the reduction for the calendar year 2021, even though y'all won't vote on that until next April, so that we can incorporate that into the FY21 fiscal budget. And there again, it's a tall ask, but as I stated, we will run any scenarios that you want so that you can do comparisons. And you'll also identify the capital cost and the needs and address that as well. Give you much more detailed information. So thank you for listening to this. I know it's easier when I just come and say we're gonna cut the tax rate and let's go home and, we're happy. But we just can't continue to do that. So thank you. Any questions?
Guess I'll start since I've been on the board before with Travis and Bill. We usually use equalization to keep it from, if you're gonna go from the 80s to the 70s, that usually equalizes. So let's say you have a $100,000 house, your house is now gonna be worth $20% more. So we'd like to see a figure of how much more the citizens are gonna have to pay for their real estate. Because like I said, bringing it down to the 70s equalizes. So if you pay $2,000 on a $100,000 house, it keeps it at $2,000 on a $100,000 house. If we're gonna jump it from the 70s back up to 81, how much more is that gonna make the revenue for the taxpayers' real estate rate go up? Do we have that handy, or is that something we're gonna have to look for?
What Natasha will do is she'll crunch numbers and send it out to everyone. And then what we can do is meet with each of the board members separately to answer any specific questions.
That's gonna be, I know, a big figure in there. I don't think my constituents are gonna go for that big of a rate.
Still be someone have to be.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm asking
Okay.
for
Right, it's gonna be
money,
tough, right?
and hopefully we can negotiate something that will actually be beneficial for everyone.
Bill?
Oh, I'm listening.
Okay. Any questions? We're to look
I
for some
really
figures.
don't at this point. Yeah, we'd love to put it down at 70 some.
No, I know.
She's advising us that we can't afford to do that, so we'll look at this and make recommendations. And if you have an idea on, she's already told us, what you think, and make Natasha work on crunching the numbers.
I mean, this is something that we've probably been aware of, that the needs are ever growing. We've talked for the last couple of years about the inability to fund needed capital either on our side or on the school side. So it's no surprise that these needs aren't going away and are ever increasing. So Ms. Tassenary certainly put together a very well thought out and very well justified reason for going this direction. It becomes our job then to try to work out what we think the right thing to do is. So I'm ready to work with all of you guys to figure out what we think the right thing to do.
Well, we're gonna have to discuss it and decide, which way we wanna go with it. It's not gonna be easy, for sure. It's gonna be someone has to do it.
Like, this is our, we don't wanna look forward to it.
When approximately would we need a board decision on which strategy to go? Give us a target deadline here.
Probably at least by second week of March, definitely then. So what I'll do is try to put some.
You're gonna run numbers from .82 to .86 and go
I'll
up to
give,
87.
right, I'll give you some
Second question.
examples.
This is great compared to other counties. Where are they in relation to their assessments? This is a 6-year mandatory. My question focuses on, if they're doing .81 in Hanover, is that based on a 2019 assessment?
Well, Hanover's most recent reassessment was completed last month. New Kent, they will be having new assessment, they have a new one to take effect last month. They seem to be on a two-year cycle, and that is something else that I wanted to talk to the board about in the future is, I would prefer to go to a 2-year cycle. That would give us a partial, and then every 4 years we'd have the full coverage. Caroline, they've got one underway, it should finish up at the same time ours does. And Essex, their reassessment will then begin 2021.
But I know that Hanover's rate at 81 has been the same for at least 10 years.
Yes.
Probably going back some time before that. That's kind of been Hanover's real stake of claim, is that their rate stays the same. They don't raise it, they don't lower it, it's 81.
So they're not getting it all back?
No,
Right.
no, but they've done assessments that have fallen, they've done assessments that certainly in the last several years that have grown. And but their rate has stayed level. I do know that New Kent, that 82 was off of their equalized rate of the last assessment was 74. And then they went to 82 off of the new assessment. I know that because I paid it attention. Essex has been going like, it's like a reverse economics chart compared to us. As we've been lowering our rate off of, where we were, they've been effectively raising it annually at the same time to try to keep up with their needs. Caroline's budget is a little more difficult to trace back, because I've done this exercise a few times in various other discussions, but it's been at 83 for at least the last 2 years that I can see. And I don't also see where there's been a drastic raise or reduction in any of the public hearing. I've actually read their public hearing minutes and stuff. This is from when we were debating budgets, like 2-3 years ago. Yeah, I still remember that. Yeah, I mean, the trend, and that's the thing, the trend all around us has been, even with assessments and stuff coming in more favorably, has been upward on the rate where most of this pressure has been. James City County that had their rate at 77 for 20 years. And that was one of their things that, like Hanover, they were never going to go up, but they went up on their new assessment that came in even too, because they're large enough that they maintain bond ratings, which is something that we don't do, but Hanover certainly does, and they were basically told by their rating agencies that they were in danger of dropping out of their prime position. So, we've been moving in one direction while everyone else around us has been moving in the other direction, and we haven't captured assessment values the way that they've been capturing it, because most of these localities, New Kent, certainly Hanover, I know Essex did theirs regionally, but I think on at least a 4-year cycle, we've been sitting here for 6 years, operating on the same assessment, and the growth that we've seen has been in new construction and new business.
So you're looking at the possibility of doing reassessments every 2 years? Did I hear you?
I would like to recommend that the board consider that. That way we could go ahead, Bright Minds is actually doing a very good job for us, and we're also one of their first clients, so we are kind of in the catbird seat with them. They basically told us that we will always be their favorite because we were their first. So they are more than willing to work with us, and in fact, Mr. Chastain has brought forward the opportunity to even reduce the cost of the parcel evaluation by using drones. So I nixed this one.
I hope you got your
But I think with future education, that might be an opportunity.
Now, assessments are in-house now. We're working for that, so hopefully we didn't do it before because it was such a big stream of companies that we used, but now that we have them, that's why we wanted to do this, so it's in-house. It'll be a lot easier for us to go back over it instead of having another company start from scratch.
And 6 years is the absolute mandatory max that we can achieve. You can do it. I think the only one that's not specifically spelled out in code was the one that we were doing when we first arrived on the scene, which is 3 years. You can do 1, you can do 2, you can do 4, 5 or 6.
You can always get burned on the other end of that too, in that session. You will be caught with, you'll probably pay.
Yeah, but if you're doing it in the way that we proposed here, then you don't get, because we've already been hit with that, right?
Oh, yeah.
We already sat there and captured the full bottom of a recession in an assessment year, and now we still have not captured the recovery from that. So, yes, you could get hit in a down year for the market, but also if you're doing it every couple of years, or as we proposed here, doing, a portion every couple of years, then you're leveling out that wave a little bit, as opposed to right now, the last assessment, we literally captured the very bottom of it, and now we're coming up into a very bullish, real estate market that, how long is that going to hold out before all of a sudden we're back with that? So the more frequently we can do it, the better off everybody is, residents and the county.
It all cycles.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to see us at is something like, something like a Hanover model, where we've got a rate that's stable and predictable, and we can, count on that rate to pay for the needs that we have without the constant, every year, having to bicker and fight over a penny or two on a rate. Something that, again, is stable and predictable, and that's good for respective businesses, that's good for lots and lots of things. If you look at the counties that have been able to successfully do it, like Hanover, like York, that really has driven a lot of good developments their way, just that knowledge that the tax rate's going to be stable. So,
Yeah, we need to take it around and talk about it.
Well, I'm definitely not asking for any kind of decision tonight, but I did want y'all to be aware of what I'm looking at. Also how it's going to, whatever decision is made is going to impact the fiscal year '21 budget. So if you would like to just send me all of your questions, you have different scenarios that you'd like to see, then Natasha will process them all, we'll sit down and kind of vet them, and then send them out as quickly as possible. Also, we'll be glad to sit down and meet with each of you to discuss any of the scenarios that we provide, or just if you have questions. Because it is confusing, and now we've thrown the reassessment in it and 2 calendar years projections, and so it gets a little confusing at times.
Do you want those by next month?
Well,
I mean,
don't think of
February's
them, please
almost
send them to us. And we'll address them as we go. But we'll make ourselves available, just so that, you have the opportunity to ask any kind of questions, and that you actually have some factual information to share with your constituents when they're talking to you.
Being new, I would love to see a couple of our major expense items coming up in the next couple of years, as you described. Maybe a couple of bullet statements that better describes the high points of what we're looking at. Nothing elaborate, but talking good, just some background, and I know it exists somewhere, but just to be able to talk to constituents, for example, would really help, especially for Stuart.
We can provide a lot more detail on the capital and more detail on the school's capital as well.
Thank you, Ms. Designary. Next item we have on the agenda is discussing on Sweet Sioux Solar Facility. Me, I guess Stuart's gonna recluse himself.
Oh, good evening, gentlemen. Full discussion on the conditional use permit for the Sweet Sioux Solar LLC facility. Just a quick overview. It's a 77 megawatt facility. The project area is about 1,262 acres. The disturbed area, what a lot of them call the fence area, is 576 acres. That'll be the disturbed area proposed. And I don't know which side, there we go. The location of this facility, shown on this map, that Infield Road is to the west. The Chenault Farm is the major part of it in the middle. The Flippo properties, which make up part of the project area, are down to the south and west of Nankin Farms. And over to the east is the Graves, and up towards the northeast will be Danville Road, quite a ways away. Solar power stations are permitted in King William County. This is a permitted use table, and solar facilities are listed, our solar power stations are listed as a permitted use. There's 2 types of permitted uses. There's by right and conditional. The by right permits, one of the big difference with them is there's no public hearings on those. You still have to get permits, you still have to do everything the ordinance says, even if it's by right. In this case, the solar power stations are conditional use permits, so they must meet all of those requirements for conditional uses. When the Board of Supervisors adopted the ordinance for solar stations about 5 years ago, as part of the zoning text amendment, they included some specific guides and standards for the development of, or the use of the land for solar facilities. Of those uses, this includes preliminary site plans for conditional use permits, which are not construction plans. So for permitted facilities, you provide the county with an application that includes a conceptual site plan so that decisions can be made about the conditions that should be placed on it. There's been a lot of concerns concerning the solar facility. One of those, well, I listed them out here, tax revenues and property values. You should have in your packet, the Commissioner of Revenue prepared a breakdown of what to expect on real estate taxes, rollback taxes, in addition to the machinery tool taxes. Just, let me see what it is here. Somewhere in line here. Maybe I don't have it in my packet, I was going to see. Oh, no, I just carried it. Just quickly, for the rollback, the Commissioner of Revenue's Office looked at the rollback value of the taxes for Sweet Sioux as of October 2nd, 2019. Taking the property out of land use would result in rollback taxes of about $81,000. That would be a one-time payment to the county. Under the real estate side, because it would be out of land use, the adopted real property tax rate, which is 86 cents per $100, would be based on the assessment of the parcel as a new usage of the property. That would result, let's see, the current annual tax rate for the solar site is about $23,000 at fair market value. And of course, assessed values will fluctuate over time, like any other real estate in the county. Then we look at machinery tools tax. The Code of Virginia does the exemption, as we all know, of 80%. So we can hit 20% on that. Using a spreadsheet to amortize that out for the whole 77 megawatt project would be about $18 million, which would depreciate over time. Basically, that ends up after the first year of build out of the project would generate about $154,800. This, of course, goes down over time with about year 25, the revenue would be approximately $17,200. So the commissioner's study ended up over the life of the Sweet Sioux Solar LLC, 35 years, you're looking at $3,750,000. Now those are projected numbers. Until the facility is actually built, there's no way to give precise numbers on that. The bottom line is more taxes will be collected on the property than are gathered now. I love when I say nothing to add on my notes. So among the concerns, there's been a lot of concerns on natural resources, impacts to streams, slopes. As part of the ordinances and their conditions, the buffered landscape conditions are designed on purpose to limit the visual impact on the neighborhoods and people coming through the county. That's built into our current ordinance, and it's been reinforced in our conditions, and as we revise and add more language to our solar ordinance, it'll still be a primary goal, because most of the complaints with solar facilities are visual. Nobody wants to see them. When you're making a decision on, when we're looking at the application for these, excuse me, the Code of King William County Ordinances lists out what to look for in conditional use permits when considering approval or denial of these permits. The limiting visual impact was a big one, but the lack of other factors, things that if they're not there, then it's a good thing to do, would, things that, odors, noises, traffic, emissions, all these should mitigate impacts to the value of the surrounding properties. We had some discussion about various reports on property values. Invenergy has given us a bunch of those, and then other reports have come in countering those. The bottom line with trying to assess or look at comps for these kind of properties is the rural areas don't have a whole lot of property turnover. There's not a lot of sale. But that in fact, there's not a whole lot of rural properties that are being sold next to existing solar facilities. So when you start looking at property values and trying to make a decision based on reports of any sort, the comps aren't there. It's very difficult to say. Overall, looking at North Carolina and different California deserts, the reports just aren't conclusive enough for me to sit here and say, oh, the property values won't go up, they won't go down. Don't know what they'll do. Oh, let's see. We had talked about fees in the conditions for this particular solar facility. The applicant would be required to pay supplemental fees. These fees are to cover the cost of additional review time, use fees for operation monitoring, inspections for stormwater control, for erosion sediment control, engineering studies, evaluations. All of that will be included in their requirements if they build the facility. So the idea behind the fees, in fact, we are revising, we came before the board before revising our building fees. We also are revising the fees for land disturbance, planning and zoning, all of that. That will be coming to y'all too. And those are the fees that the facilities will have to pay going forward. One of the other concerns was about decommissioning. Decommissioning is something that I was very in tune to long before I came here. Our conditions, condition number 2, basically says there's going to be no salvage credit for their surety, for their bond. So when we do the estimate for decommissioning, how much it's going to cost to get rid of the stuff and everything out of the ground and all the buildings gone, there'll be no, oh, well, it's only, we want $1 million because we think we'll get this much to salvage, recycle and get money for it. No credits for that. We also put in the fact that the surety, the bond, it states escrow account, so a bank account with $3 million in it to decommission or whatever the estimate would be, or some, some other surety that would have to go through the county administrator and the county attorney to make sure that it was bulletproof, that whether they went bankrupt, whether they sold the company, whatever, that we would have a bond agreement in place to cover the complete cost if we had to bring somebody in to decommission the solar plant. One of the other things we did, the decommissioning plan and estimate will be reviewed every 5 years. And based on that review, we can make changes to how much the surety is for. So if for some reason the cost of hauling away steel gets really expensive, we can recover those costs and make sure that those costs are covered. One of the things that I've been going back and forth with on and lots of questions from the board, is the difference between a conditional use permit and a construction permit. A conditional use permit will not give you permission to build anything. It's not a construction permit. You have to go through, once the use permit is approved or disapproved, if it's approved, then you start worrying about what you have to go through to construct this facility. The permit by rule, which is a DEP requirement, and I think in the last Board of Supervisors, I gave y'all a copy of the permit by rule. All the different studies, all the engineering studies, all the wildlife studies, Corps of Engineers, which they do already have a jurisdictional determination from them. But it lists out all of the specific wildlife, drainage, all these things have to be submitted, reviewed, and approved before they can move a blade of grass out at the solar farm site. Not only is a permit by rule, which covers a whole lot of things, and it is unique by the DEQ for solar farms, so they have special requirements geared just for the operations and maintenance of these farms. Just to get a construction general permit, you have to go through the DEQ. That covers your stormwater, your erosion sediment control. Stormwater management plans have to be submitted. These are detailed engineering drawings that address slopes, drainage areas, all the topography. These aren't conceptual, these are actually detailed engineering drawings. One of the things that have come up a lot is about potential impacts to the streams and wetlands. If during the course of submitting these construction permits applications, if they can't meet the requirements for working on a steep slope, or if it turns out the topography of this site makes it impossible to prevent, mitigate impacts to the streams, they won't get their permit and the facility will not be constructed. And the same thing, you've got federal, state, and local. On the local side of things, before they can get a land disturbance permit, before they can do any construction, they also have to get county approval from our office, Community Development, for the erosion sediment control plan. Again, that plan is reviewed by third-party technical review. And just to give you an example, any job pretty much, it takes contractors or developers 3 or 4 submittals before they get an approved plan. Because if anything in those plans don't meet the requirements for working with or managing your stormwater and adequate erosion sediment control, you don't get a permit, you can't build. One of the concerns, and part of that is my background with hazardous waste facilities, was the post-construction and operation. The state doesn't require solar facilities to have a facility stormwater management plan, but I feel that it's a good idea because this facility will be here for 35 years. We should be monitored. We should be able to make sure that they're following all the rules, that it operates how it should be done. So we put in condition 16, which requires a facility stormwater pollution prevention plan. And then condition 17 is an annual compliance, comprehensive site compliance evaluation. And again, we had a little supplemental fee that would be paid so that we could have a third-party engineering firm or someone who is knowledgeable enough to go in, evaluate the facility operation, make sure there's nothing going on with the facility during the life, and if there is something going on with that facility, then we can correct it, or they will not be able to continue to operate. That is so that for the life of that facility, we can keep track of it. There's a number of considerations that people ask us about. I don't know how much tax revenue will be generated from this facility. Can't know until that's built and we have actual numbers. But either way, coming out of land use, tax revenue will increase. Their solar facility is not going to increase enrollment in the school system. There's no production water in use at these facilities, so there's no going to be no groundwater withdrawal. No impact to roads because there's not a whole lot of truck traffic that involves. You can have a guy coming out about, once a month doing maintenance, and then they might have 1 or 2 guys out there on the routine maintenance.
With the exception of the construction phase.
Now, during the construction phase, which is one of the reasons some of our conditions were very specific. The Planning Commission came up with some really good things for the construction phase of the project because that is very specific to that neighborhood. And there are things about their hours of operation, don't want to impact the neighbors, truck traffic, maintaining the roads, improving the roads, making sure they're restored, a number of things, and the noise requirements for when they're pile driving. All of those are included in the conditions that the Planning Commission recommended to the board. I was asked about, the Planning Commission did vote 3-2 to approve the conditional use permit with the 18 conditions. There were two dissenting votes, Chairman Wagner and Ms. Height. Chairman Wagner, I think, provided y'all with some documentation of why he did not approve or recommend approval. Ms. Hyde indicated that her reason for not recommending approval at that time was she wanted more time and thought that there should be more information. And to make a fully formed decision, she wanted more time to look at all the information that's available because it's been coming in fast and furious for the most part.
Would you be able to say definitively that Chairman Wagner's concerns will be addressed, mitigated, resolved during the next phase, if approved for conditional use?
The 2 items that he was most concerned with, steep slopes and impact to the Wet Creek, I believe it is, and were the dams. As far as the slopes and impacts of wetlands, again, you're not going to get a permit until you prove that those won't be impacted. So all the engineering drawings are doing that. As far as the 2 dams and the dam safety concerns that we had, the dams are there now. They're going to be there whether the solar farm, the risk from the catastrophic event he described in this thing exists now. And the solar farm development, if nothing else, if the land goes out of agricultural use, which is exempt for your stormwater management regulations, it's exempt, agricultural dams are exempt from O&M. If this is developed as a solar facility, all the stormwater management practices have to be put into place to take care of it. You'll have deeper rooted plants, a lot more infiltration. The dams will have to be regulated, have O&M, all that. So it's less likely for that situation that he described to happen if the land is put into use as a solar facility and taken out of agricultural use. So those concerns should be completely eliminated during the construction permitting process.
If not, could that be I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's over here, that we want to talk about. It won't go through.
Yes, if they are not resolved, that they will not be able to proceed.
Correct.
Period.
At any point in, land use is about, can we use the land for this? Once you get to the construction permitting process, the PBR, that's probably the next place they'll go. Oh, they have to. At any point in that process, they can't meet the requirements, they can't build. If they get through all of that and they get to the DEQ stormwater, when they put in their stormwater management plan. The DQ could review that plan, go through it, and if they can't come up with a plan that's approvable, they can't build, they can't construct. And then even once it gets down to the county level, because we are the erosion sediment control administrators responsible for construction activities, if in the course of the erosion sediment control plan review, if it can't meet the requirements, and they won't be able to build it because we won't issue a land disturbance permit. And to give you an example, there is another solar facility in the county that has over a year now been trying to get an approved land disturbance permit. It's well over a year, and they haven't come up with a plan that's approvable. And that's a situation that happens to this construction. And there's so many concerns with construction and, you know, avoiding sedimentation of lakes and rivers, that's why the process for construction permitting is so highly regulated. There's so much technical review with it, so that things don't slip through the cracks. Couple things just wanted to put out there for everyone. The proposed use is permitted by our code, and it does meet the requirements for granting a conditional use permit. The CUP conditions require that the facility siting, construction, and operation are planned and approved to minimize potential detrimental impacts to the neighborhood and the surrounding community. The majority of the concerns are construction related and are regulated by the state's PBR, Construction General Permit regulations. The CUP does not, the issuance of this conditional use permit does not permit construction of the facility. It does not. The conditions recommended by the Planning Commission for this conditional use permit are going to be the basis of our revised solar ordinance. If the board decides that solar facilities are going to be allowed in the county, we recognize that the solar ordinances probably need to be shored up a little bit. And since you're allowed to make reasonable conditions for this solar facility, these conditions will become the development standards and replace the ones that are currently in place, that this solar facility has to be judged on what we have in place now. Fortunately, we can put conditions on for how it should be, and for any future facilities, what you've read in those 18 conditions will be actual development standards. All solar facilities will have to meet those standards going forward. Somewhere around, it doesn't like them. But if you look on the last slide of what I handed you, is their recommendations. The staff has not changed their recommendations. We still recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the 18 conditions proposed or recommended by the Planning Commission. And Mr. Hodges, I was trying to get through that really quickly.
You were afraid I was going to.
I was
15 minutes and then went over.
But the idea here,
Extremely close.
I was trying to keep an eye on it. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and going forward, feel free to come by the office, drop me an email. There is a huge amount of information, and most of it is basically he said, she said type information. They say this one thing. What I've presented to y'all tonight is what the ordinances say, what the state and federal laws require, all of the different issues. There's so many things about contaminating groundwater aquifers that just aren't really possible. You have to have a contaminant to have contamination. There's, again, a lot of technical things that are being thrown out concerning solar facilities by people who don't want development. Bottom line, most all of this, if it's the construction part of it, it's not the use as a solar facility. It's construction, and that's going to apply to anything we build in the county.
One thing I don't recall having seen, we can assume that solar technology is going to remain static for 35 years. I've not seen anything in all the paperwork. If they were to come back in 15 years and say, we've got this revolutionary new technology we want to incorporate because we're going to be able to create 50% more energy with the same space, does that require a brand new cup?
That would be a modification of their conditional use permit. And, I mean, things like that happen all the time with other conditional use permits. They would have to come back, modify the conditional use permit. It would require public hearings, and it's not so, giving them this use for the conditional use permit, they are locked into it. Very few things, other than maybe a couple typos or whatever, could be done administratively. Any modification to their conceptual plan and these conditions have to come before the board of supervisors and planning.
I wanted to throw out something that was there in the planning commission. One of our board members had an issue was about the panels, and you know about the memo from the company that says if we wanted to add an extra condition to assure that they weren't going to use those panels that might have a problem, they're not going to use them. But that was one of the reasons Ms. Height also concerned to me that she wasn't comfortable with it, because as we found out in the past, some of our companies have done the old switcheroo on us and maybe substituted a lower grade panel or these thin film panels. So if we feel more comfortable, we can always add a last condition. They're not going to use the conditions, but she was concerned that it's not in there, so they could maybe change it. We could put in there not to use any of those panels, period.
I would consider that a change to the, if they
Right.
change the
I would too,
construction
but
panel, that
right.
is the thing. And as far as cadmium telluride,
you can't get
chances
it.
of them finding
Right,
telluride.
it's hard to find. There's something that's
That's
got
nice.
to alleviate some issues. I mean, it doesn't hurt to add it.
But
That was one
Mr.
of the
Moran's consideration about things improving and
Right.
you know,
They
new
have to
technology.
redo.
The cadmium telluride, I believe from what my discussions with engineers over at Energy, which are constantly looking for improvements, is that what they're using out here is an improvement over the thin film
From them.
and the cadmium telluride.
And I also wanted to bring up that the company's been over backwards working with community staff, planning commission, and the board of supervisors and members of the community. Every time the issues have been brought up, they've answered the questions, whether on their own. We didn't ask them to answer questions. They've answered. They sent emails up to the planning commission. They've sent emails to us. They've changed some of their requirements. They've like Ron said, we've added 18 conditional use permits in order to basis the new solar ordinance if we wish to go forward with that. And also, we wanted to mention, outline, like Ron said, these issues that are brought up are issues with construction, not with it being a solar farm in the future. It would happen whether it was a solar farm or agricultural or a manufacturing facility. It's the problems that have been having in the past at these other counties was during construction and strange things that happened that there was no right, and also like I said, this type of storm, if this type of kind of storm would happen on the farm as it is, there would be much more catastrophic results with what now. If they just tilled the land and they had one of those catastrophic events, that stuff would all run off, because the Chanel's told me they don't till. So what they do is they spray chemicals all over the stuff to kill the weeds, then they plant their stuff. All that stuff would wash up. She spreads 15,000 gallons of water on those fields every day. All that runs right into the sewer, the storms and wastewater, like Ron said.
It's uncontrolled storm.
Right.
And agricultural purposes are exempt for good reason.
Right, that's why, because otherwise they
They
wouldn't be able to do it.
They gotta be able to grow the crops,
Right,
but
the last thing, like Ron said about the dams, as he says, David, now presently they're in there and they're not in compliance with any DCR rules. This Invenergy will have to meet the DCR dam safety regulations and meet them. They currently are not. So I think that it would be an advantage to have this. Plus, we do get, everybody was saying they were wondering about the income. We have something from Sally. It's just basic because she doesn't know exactly. It could be more than this is the minimum. This is how much we'll get right off the bat for bringing it out of land use. People have complained about land use in the past. We get this much right off the bat, ups it to the normal real estate rate. And Travis was worried about something in I just went to my training in Baco for the chairmans, and I talked to the guy there about the new ordinance, okay, and they may come into effect, but they've done their due diligence, put their application, and they may even have to fall under these, depending on when they may not even come about. But that.
Well, and that's regardless of whether, it's House Bill, I can't remember what it is, just came out,
Right.
where they are actually, the General Assembly says counties shall have companies do a decommissioning plan. Apparently, we have counties that aren't concerned about that. We already covered that. As far as the fees go for the annual comprehensive evaluation fee, we'll cover, that is part of the reason that we put those supplemental fees. The Planning Commission, we wanted to make sure that supplemental fees were in there to cover the cost of the county. We want to make sure, it's not cheap to just do a routine inspection of 576 square feet of surrounded by silt fence. It takes a lot to get out there and do that, and the amount of time, as everyone has noticed, that we've had to spend in just the conditional use permit process. One of the things on the fees, when we come to the board with the new fee schedule, right now, it's very basic. We're going to change it over to cover by acre. So projects, the larger scale projects that take up all of the time of the board, planning commission, and staff, will be recouped through the fees. By going by acre, 5-acre site, okay, that's reasonable. You've got a 1,200 acre site, it needs to be by acre. We have to get that money back.
Discussion this one?
Well, I've over the course of the past several months, asked many, many questions. All of my questions have been answered in one fashion or another. Last time I brought up some legislation that was coming through, but the way that legislation is written one way or another, it could or could not apply to this. So I'm less concerned now than I was then about waiting on that. So again, every concern that I've had that's been brought to me by either constituent or somebody that's got experience with these things, I've brought to you guys. And they've been interesting. So.
I'm ready to see the resolution.
Yeah, I'd be okay bringing this back.
Okay.
I wish,
Yeah.
Mr. Vedder had presented this.
I know. That's why I said we needed to get it done now. You ought to see what he gave to me a week ago. It was 3 times as big.
There's a lot of
So,
information.
I said, we
Ron,
need to shrink it.
No, you out of time.
Okay. Thank you, thanks. Yes. Anyway, then.
I worried about your shoe dropping down.
The big net. I don't know what that is. It's a board supervisor's request. I think it's something new. Is it something that the administrator wants us to see how we feel about any requests we may have for the staff? Or not board supervisor's request. I didn't. That's what the people have asked me what it stood for. They asked me what this was. It's never been on here before. We never.
Well, I've got some. Okay. We gotta get Stuart, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Sure.
I mean, it's all right. I thought it was good.
Next year.
Section for work sessions for you guys to bring.
Well, that's right. That's what I thought the work session was
But
for
if
originally.
maybe something different or.
No, that's fine. That makes sense.
With it now, are you talking about budgetary?
Anyhow, Anything you want to bring up, and that's sort of wrap up the work
I got
session.
it, I got a couple.
No, not yet, we're still on the new board of supervisors request.
Mr. Chairman, you want to let Mr.
Yes.
All right, it's very short.
Okay.
I guess as much as a question, or have y'all even looked at adding more funding, since we're doing more at Station 1, will the demands in West Point are the same way? Are we looking at adding any more funding? I know they have the 120,000,
For operational fire and EMS.
but all of them are getting it.
Yes, we will be, if, the request that we present to you for fire and EMS is going to be a lot higher, for just the department, yes.
And the only other thing I think would be is just expressing that I am going to make a recommendation that we accept the RCC increase. That's all I
Right now, like I said, this is something we're gonna have on there forever, so we can come up with stuff every time. Stuart.
Came in on the tail end of this.
That's something new, like I said, it's new for us
Yeah,
too,
well,
we've never done it before, so any
I'll,
ideas, think about it, we can come up with
Yeah,
next time.
I'll think about it, and come up with something, I'm sure.
We're talking about this.
The board of supervisors request, like I said, they've got stuff that you sent us, it might
I
be
just want to
something.
know what the rules of the game are. When I have ideas, I looked into, I use CC, complimentary copy, doesn't mean action.
Right, that,
But I
okay.
can send it to you for your perusal
Right.
and recommendation to present it to the county administrator, and
Right.
from there it disperses to the department, so.
Okay, that's the way it usually works,
But
but
I
it
don't know
wasn't.
if there's a better way of doing that, please
Well-
let me know.
Okay, what we had in the past, we've kind of got a consensus because you can't talk together. You can talk to one other person at a time. If you want to do the legwork to begin with, you talk to Stuart, then you talk to Travis, then you talk to Bill, and if they like the ideas you have, you say, I've got the consensus, and then I'll verify with them, and then you give it to the chair. The chair takes it to the county. All I was concerned about is that the county should be carbon copied of it to begin with because it hasn't been approved by all. We got into trouble with the last board because people were bringing stuff straight to the departments. So that was an issue.
To me, it's an industrial, it's a corporate philosophy that you give people heads up on them.
Not unless
CC
it's,
does not
right.
require action.
But still, you don't send it to her because then she sort of expects that she needs to do something with it. That's what the boards, Travis, maybe it could be different, but because if you're letting her know ahead of time, you haven't got a consensus that the board wants to further action.
Well, I took Mr. Moran's email to be more what he's presenting it as, which was, here's some thoughts,
Right.
a kind of correspondence, rather than demanding any type of specific action. And I also took it to be in line with our bylaws in the manner in which you presented it. So I don't, I think maybe just, I think we're just kind of feeling out
Right, however.
maybe particular language each one of us uses in certain incidences or when we're looking for certain things. So hopefully that clarification will clear that up. But the correspondence that I saw go out, I did not interpret
That's
to be
fine.
out of
So
line.
do we want to do that? We can, everybody, if they have some ideas, you
Again,
send it.
Mr. Chairman,
That's-
we're learning over here.
That's fine, no, I'm willing too, if we want to do that,
Yeah.
let's do it.
We're all
Right, let's all do it.
But I use this type of email etiquette in my
Right.
past life
Business,
and corporate life, and it works very well. To give those that will eventually probably be in action, at least a courtesy heads up
Right.
to prepare.
Sounds
And
good, I guess.
I think with what I have seen and everything, correspondence has went, as long as it doesn't go to an individual department head
Yeah,
straight
right.
without going through
That's
the county administrator, because that's what we're paying them.
And that's the issue, I guess, that may be a problem. In the past, certain individual supervisors would go straight to a department head, straight to some staff, and demand them to do some work. Maybe that's the way we should put it. You don't do that. Right. And then maybe there's some concern. You can always ask questions, any board member can ask questions of any step, just don't do questions that are gonna take 25% of their time. If it's a quick question, if you wanna know how they do things, that kind of thing, that's fine, but don't give them an action that needs maybe board approval or something like that, right, Travis, I guess?
But I think, again, the sorting out of exactly what takes a tremendous amount of time and what doesn't, would just require a simple answer from staff. This will take a little longer. Is it something that you want us to spend a tremendous amount of staff time on, or is it not?
But believe me, this is much better than last time.
Oh, yes, yes, and like I said, nobody's,
And with that, Mr. Chair, do you have anything else?
no, I didn't.
I'd make a motion, we, in accordance with section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the Board of Supervisors convene in closed session to consider a personnel matter involving the performance of the county administrator.
Second.
All right.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Garber?
Aye.
Mr. Moore? Mr. Miskowski?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye. We're now moving closed session.
You've learned lots about